Have you ever stopped in the hustle and bustle of life to ask yourself, what guides us in our darkest moments? In a small village nestled by a large river, a girl with a pure heart accidentally caught a sad gaze. The gaze of an abandoned dog, standing silently in the corner of the world, carrying secrets that no one knows. The journey began with a small blade of grass, a gentle whisper, and a simple but strong determination not to leave any life in the dark. What the girl did not know was that this decision would open up a story beyond what she could have imagined. Love and patience gradually erased the boundaries of fear, connecting lost souls and transforming them forever. But this journey was not easy. Challenges, breathtaking moments, and even pain from the past constantly tested their faith. And then, when the light finally reaches the deepest place, you will realize that miracles do not come from grandiose things, but from simple actions and perseverance to the end. Where did you find this story? From a friend's recommendation or just by chance? Share it with us in the comments. And if this story touches you, don't forget to click subscribe. Tomorrow, a special story awaits you. A story that we believe will touch your heart even more deeply. Early morning in Tamarin village, sunlight filtered through the green palm trees, illuminating the sparkling waters of the great river. The cries of vendors on small boats mingled with the sound of oars splashing in the water. Lyra, a 7-year-old girl with bright eyes and hair tousled by the river breeze, stood on the deck of the family boat, absorbed in the bustling scene. "I want to go down to the other side to see the pottery stalls," Lyra said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Her father, Kai, smiled, skillfully guiding the boat to the dock. Lyra's bare feet touched the soft, cool soil, and she couldn't contain her excitement running towards the riverside stalls. As they turned a corner where few people passed, Lyra suddenly stopped. There, tied to a barren palm trunk, was a wild hunting dog. Its dark brown fur was ragged and streaked with mud. The dog's eyes, big, black, and sad, seemed to be filled with an invisible pain, a silent cry for help. The dog looked up at Lyra, its gaze piercing her heart. "Mommy, I see that dog?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Elena approached, her eyes slightly surprised at the sight of the animal. "Poor thing," she said softly, "but be careful." Lyra nodded, approaching slowly. She squatted down, keeping a safe distance, but not taking her eyes off the dog. "Hello," she whispered, her voice soft as a cool breeze. The dog did not move, only slightly flattened its ears. Lyra picked up a soft blade of grass and placed it on the ground near the dog. "I won't hurt you," she said. After a moment's hesitation, the dog bent down to sniff the blade of grass. Its tail quivered, but stopped immediately, as if afraid that the joy was wrong. Lyra felt her heart tighten. "Are you sad?" "I'm here," she continued, her voice softer than ever. At that moment, a loud voice rang out from behind. "What's she doing?" A burly, gruff man emerged from a nearby stall. He glanced at Lyra and the dog with distaste. "She can do whatever she wants. She's useless. No one needs her." Lyra looked up at the man, her clear eyes now filled with confusion. "What do you mean, useless? She needs a friend." The man shrugged and turned away, not bothering to answer. He didn't even realize that his words had awakened a powerful belief in her, that all living things deserve to be loved. "Mother?" Lyra looked up, her voice urgent. "We can't leave him here. He looks so sad." Elena bent down to her daughter. gently stroking her hair. "Lyra, this isn't easy. We don't know if it's dangerous, but I'll find a way." That small promise, though reserved, was enough to brighten Lyra's face. She turned back and sat beside the dog for a while longer, saying small things to him as if to reassure him. The dog didn't answer, but his eyes, though still sad, seemed to have a glimmer of hope. As the family left, Lyra turned back one last time. She saw the dog still standing there, watching them, unmoving. And in his eyes, Lyra saw a plea that she knew she couldn't ignore. That was when everything began to change, not just for the dog, but also for Lyra's and her family's hearts. The small boat glided across the water, carrying Lyra's family and a new passenger. The wild hound, now called Juno by Lyra, lay curled at her feet. Lyra sat still, her small hand stroking Juno's ragged fur. Juno shivered slightly as her hand brushed past, but the dog's frightened eyes began to soften, as if sensing that he was safe. "He was probably never loved," Lyra whispered. The sea breeze blew gently through her hair, carrying the salty scent of the waves. Juno lifted her head a little, her ears perking at Lyra's gentle voice. She bent down, putting her ear close to his. "You know what? This is your new home. Things will get better from now on." When the boat reached the dock, Juno hesitantly stepped out. The first steps on the soft sand made him hesitate, but Lyra's laughter was like sunshine. "Come on, Juno," she called, running ahead. For the first time, Juno's tail wagged, ever so slightly, but enough to make Lyra's heart flutter. Lyra's family's beach house was surrounded by palm trees and hedges of bright bougainvillea. Inside, Alina had prepared a small bed with a soft blanket for Juno in the corner of the living room. But instead of lying down, Juno just stood there, cowering, her eyes alert to everything around her. "Juno needs time," Kai said, putting his hand on Lyra's shoulder. "She's not used to feeling safe, and time was something Lyra was willing to give Juno." Every morning, she woke up earlier than usual and led Juno to the beach as the sun rose. At first, the dog just stood on the sand, watching the waves intently like a stranger entering an unknown world. Lyra sat patiently next to Juno, occasionally picking up a small piece of seaweed and handing it to him. "You don't have to be afraid," she said, her voice soft as the ocean breeze. "You have me." As the days passed, Juno began to take his first steps down to the water's edge. His wet legs stopped shaking, and his eyes grew brighter. One morning, as Lyra was running around on the sand, Juno suddenly ran after him, his tail wagging harder than ever. Lyra's clear laughter mingled with the sound of the waves, and for the first time, Juno barked, not out of fear, but out of joy. But the healing journey wasn't always easy. Whenever there was a loud noise, like a branch breaking or a distant motorboat, Juno would curl up and hide in a small corner on the porch. On rainy nights, the sound of thunder would make him shiver, curling up like a shadow of his old fear. Lyra didn't abandon Juno in those moments. The little girl sat beside him, her hand on his fur, telling him stories about the sea, about the stars in the sky. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," Lyra whispered, as if it were an affirmation, a promise. The family continued to look for ways to help Juno. They brought in an animal behaviorist, Jonah, to assess the dog's condition. Jonah looked at Juno with understanding eyes. "He's been through some very difficult things," he said, his gaze softening. "But he has a strong heart. With love and patience, he will recover." Jonah set up a simple but loving training plan. He taught the family how to use rewards to motivate Juno, a gentle approach so as not to frighten her. Lyra was the first to try it. She held a small cake, gently sat down, and called to Juno. At first, the dog just watched from afar, but when Lyra's eyes lit up with trust and love, Juno gradually moved closer. His tail wagged gently. As the weeks passed, Juno became more confident. One day, while Lyra was sitting on the steps reading a book, Juno suddenly rested his head on her leg, his eyes half closed as if to say, "I believe in you." Lyra's heart lit up, and she knew that little by little, Juno was finding herself again. During the afternoons on the beach, Lyra and Juno played by the waves, their silhouettes stretching across the sand. The dog who had been afraid of the world now ran free, his eyes as bright as the sunset at the end of the day. And there, on this shore, love became a miracle, healing even the deepest wounds. Juno and Lyra's peaceful days by the sea soon became fond memories, but their greatest challenge lay ahead. One sunny morning, as Lyra walked Juno through the market in Tamarin, she heard a familiar voice. "So it's you," the voice said, deep and mocking. Lyra turned and came face to face with Ruko, Juno's former owner. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the dog. Juno immediately stood in front of Lyra, her back arched and her ears strained. "You stole my dog, girl?" Ruko asked, his voice cold. Lyra gripped Juno's leash, trying to stay calm, but her heart was pounding. "You don't take care of Juno," Lyra replied, her voice low but firm. "She deserves better." Ruko chuckled, his eyes flashing menacingly. "You have no right. I'll take it back, and there's nothing you can do about it." His words cut through the air like a cold wind. Lyra returned home, worried. As she told him what had happened, Alina and Kai immediately realized the gravity of the situation. They were determined not to let Juno fall into the hands of such an evil man again. The family sought out Mira, an animal rights lawyer. Mira, with her sharp eyes and authoritative voice, listened to their story seriously. "We can fight," she said, "but we need to be prepared. Evidence of how Ruko treated Juno will be key." Lyra's family began gathering evidence. Photos of Juno, emaciated when she was rescued. Veterinary records documenting her recovery, and testimonials from neighbors were all included in the lawsuit. Lyra also wrote a letter to the court, telling of her friendship with Juno, how the dog had changed her life, and how they had healed each other. During those tense days of preparation, Juno was not only the center of the family's efforts to protect her, but also the source of strength for the entire family. Whenever Lyra felt anxious, she would sit next to Juno, placing her hand on his soft fur. "You've been strong through so much," she whispered. "Now it's my turn. I won't let anyone hurt you again." Despite the growing pressure, the light of love and determination in Lyra's family never dimmed. They knew that this battle was not just to protect Juno, but to prove something sacred, that every life deserves love and respect. The day of the trial finally arrived, bringing with it a mixture of anxiety and hope in the hearts of the whole family. Lyra wore the pale blue dress her mother had prepared, holding Juno's leash tightly. The dog walked beside her, looking strong, but still with a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. Alina gently squeezed Lyra's shoulder, whispering, "Trust me." We did everything we could. In the small courtroom, Ruko sat across from her, her eyes coldly looking at Juno. Lyra felt the dog tremble slightly, but she leaned down and whispered, "I'm here. You're not alone." As if understanding the reassurance, Juno stood up straight, her ears perking up a little. Mira began her presentation with a calm and sharp tone. One by one, pictures of Juno's emaciated body, medical records proving her recovery, and testimonies from neighbors were presented. Lyra's letter was read aloud in court, and Mira's emotional voice made the room quiet. Juno is not just a dog, but my best friend. He saved me from the saddest days and taught me how to love unconditionally. The judge's eyes gradually softened when he heard the last sentence. He quietly looked at Lyra and Juno. His eyes seemed to see through the unbreakable bond between the girl and the dog. When it was Ruko's turn, he argued that Juno was his property and that he had the right to take the dog back. But that defense was not convincing enough when Mira presented evidence of his animal abuse, including testimony from people in the Tamarin market. After a moment of deliberation, the judge spoke, his voice firmly stamping the hearts of everyone in the room. With clear evidence in the best interests of the dog Juno, the court decided that the dog will be kept by Lyra's family. The previous owner was not competent to care for this dog. Tears of joy rolled down Lyra's cheeks as she hugged Juno tightly. The dog rested his head on hers, his eyes filled with trust and relief. "You belong to me," Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. The court's decision was not only a victory for Lyra's family, but also a victory for love and compassion. Ruko left the courtroom in a rage, but an investigation into him was soon launched, exposing his animal abuse. After the trial, Lyra's family returned to their beach house, where Juno ran across the sand in the sunset. Lyra's laughter echoed with the sound of the waves, and in that moment, the world seemed to say, that love, when strong enough, can heal all wounds and change fates. Juno officially became a member of Lyra's family. One afternoon, as Lyra and Juno played on the sand, the sunset cast a golden glow over the ocean, and her family sat on the porch, beaming with joy at the sight of the once abandoned dog now found happiness. The story of Lyra and Juno became a symbol of rebirth and the power of love. Juno and Lyra's story is not only a journey to save a dog from pain, but also a profound lesson in love and patience. In life, we all have times when we feel lost, hurt like Juno, or need a guiding light like Lyra did. But it is love, sincere, lasting, that will heal all wounds, no matter how deep. This journey reminds us that every life deserves to be cherished. When we open our hearts and take the time to love, we not only change someone's life, but also make our hearts more beautiful. We thank you, our wonderful viewers, for taking the time to accompany and feel this story. If you also believe that love and kindness have the power to change the world, please like to spread this message, share to help Juno's story reach more hearts, and comment on a quote that you love and inspires you to live positively from the story. Let love guide you and be a light for each other. Thank you for being a part of this miracle.